Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grounded Roots Healing. I am Jason, and today I'm going to talk about the love of my life. I knew this was going to be a problem. I'll try to hold it together, but I might not. So for those of you who don't know me directly, my wife Amanda is who I'm referring to. Those of you who do know me directly would know who she is and would likely agree with everything I'm about to say. Not likely, for sure. So where to start? Amanda and I met in 1997. I was 19 years old. I think she was 17 or 20 and 18, something like that. And she was working as a tourist information bureau. I don't know what you'd call them. She was the one who would tell the plethora of tourists that we have here in our beautiful province every summer to where they could go and to have the best experience. And I happened to be working at the RCMP office, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I had gotten a miracle job as a summer student, so bicycle patrol, which was my dream at the time, was to become a police officer. And I was dating someone at the time, and it was relatively serious. This is my final year of school, and by some miracle, well, first of all, we met. The first day we met, I still remember it vividly, and it was before we even started working in these facilities. It was like the introduction to introduce everybody, and by chance I happened to run into her, and she stood out, let's put it that way. And I think the same for myself. In fact, she often says that she knew she was going to marry me. So we eventually, this semi-serious relationship, this girlfriend that I had decided to break up with me, and I immediately started pursuing Amanda, and it went very quickly. Now, we've been together ever since, minus a few hiatus, which I'll get to at some point in this, a few months apart, which was necessary. And I mean, everything is necessary. We are clearly soulmates. We couldn't have been more opposite. It's not possible. Every single thing that I like, she likes the opposite. Every weakness I have, she has a strength, and vice versa. We are as matched as anyone could ever be. We are a match pair. And I know why now. So we, by chance, after this meeting, and we started dating, by chance we were both going to the same university in the fall. After this job was going to be over, we were going to head to the same university and have all those experiences ourselves. Now, for those who don't watch this channel, let me give you a little background of who I am and why this was so monumental as I dropped my wedding ring. I grew up in abject poverty. I was witness to SA at 7 years old, which traumatized me severely. I had depression from, well, what happened, as well as many other things, for 40 years. You know, from 7 years onward, so when she met me, I was often in a depressive state. I ended up abusing alcohol, having been exposed to it from an early age. Eventually, I was using marijuana in excess as well. I didn't have a lot going for me. The family I grew up in was damaged. You know, my parents, as much as they loved me, couldn't show it, so I couldn't show it. It just goes on and on and on. I had a rough childhood. I didn't have a lot of... didn't have it easy, and I didn't have the best chance at making this life good, to be honest. So that's why we met. And, you know, I'm of the opinion that we take these challenges, these stories that we write for ourselves on, we decide before we incarnate into these bodies, and I chose a difficult one. I definitely did. Now, Amanda's wasn't as difficult in that way, in the early stages. She had a lot of challenges, and still does, and she amazes me how much she works through them, or how well she works through them. But in regards to her understanding that I was troubled, you know, my father also had schizophrenia, or has schizophrenia. So I grew up with mental health issues. My mother had a food addiction and died at 61 due to heart failure. This this family and this baggage that I was coming with, she knew before she agreed to marry me what she was getting herself into, because she did write the story for herself. And I know without a doubt that I wouldn't have made it without her. It's not possible. I wasn't strong enough. I didn't have the skills that I needed from her to make it through this. And that's why we came together. So it's getting to the point where we're almost one person. You know, I worked as an oil field consultant so we met, we dated, we went through university, which was extremely difficult, and it was traumatizing for her. So I'm very smart. I had a ton of potential as far as scholastically, but because of all the baggage, like I said, the alcohol and the depression in particular, I wasn't able to make the best of the university. I did very well, but I could have done so much better with a clean slate, let's say. Not being in fight or flight mode your entire life, and sleeping. Insomnia as well, by the way. So these 4 years that we did this, we were together, and it was very traumatizing for her, because this is the first time I had to go out in the world and start to live with emotions, with other people, and understand how to navigate. It was the test run, you know, and it wasn't easy. It was very, very difficult. There was a period where she broke up with me, and because I was a psychological mess, and then she took me back on because she knew the potential that I had and who I was, and that this stuff was just that. It was stuff. It was things that had happened, and for some reason she had faith that I was going to be able to get through it. So I thank her for that every day. Then we left after graduating to go halfway across, more than halfway, the other side of this country that we live in. to pursue careers in a place where there was lots of jobs at the time. And we were on our own. We were living together, and we literally grew up together. We grew into adulthood together. All the highs and lows, all the initial starting of antidepressants because I couldn't tolerate the pressure of life anymore, and the increased alcohol consumption that I got under control. And then, it just was a very, very stressful time. I was a mess. And then it got better. So we started to have a little success, and I think that's the way this story goes, as they say. It's cyclical. You have periods of extreme pain, and then you get a little breather from things, and where life looks a bit more optimistic, let's say. So we ended up buying a home in Calgary, Alberta, and we got lucky and hit a housing boom, and I was making really good money for the time, and we had some family around us, which we cherished. And then we found out she was pregnant, and it had come at a time with our first child. It had come at a time, this is before the home, that it's a long story. I can go on for hours and hours, but I had applied to become a police officer because that was my dream, and she went with me. We left the town we were in. We headed north to try to be closer to some family that we had up there. And then we found out she was pregnant, and then the financial strain came with that. So she went back home, and while I tried to make enough money to figure out what we're going to do next. Now, I wouldn't have been a good police officer. I have the compassion, but I wouldn't have been able to see the stuff and let it go that you see in those positions. So I didn't do that. We were separated at a Christmas time where she was pregnant. It was just the most stressful time of our lives. And then we decided to move back to Calgary. We're going to move her back. We're going to go start this game over again. And that led to a period of it was wonderful. Like I said, we bought a home, and it by chance doubled in price over a year because we had hit a housing boom. I was making good money, and our son was born, and we had family close that we loved, and it was just amazing. Like, everything looked rosy, and we decided, because we wanted to raise our children back here in the place where we grew up, that we were going to use the money that we got from this home to pay off some debts and come back. Of course, I skipped right over our wedding, which we had the wedding down here, and it went really well and everything. So we took this monumental task of me having to fly back and forth, which led to a decade more of traveling all over the world while she stayed at home with now 3 children, and by herself trying to manage this. In the meantime, she decided she was going to go to university and become a teacher. So she did, I hope I don't forget it, but 2 masters. She did her advanced degree to get a teaching certificate, and then she did a master's degree. Just insane. And all the while, I'm flying all over the world so that I can make enough money. And we did all of this so that our children could be raised around my wife's family, essentially. So they could have relationships with the people that mattered to us and my family down here. And that went very well as it could. You know, I was still a depressed human being. So why am I telling you all of this? The amount of support I've received from Amanda over, well, longer than I was alive. I've been with Amanda longer than I wasn't with her in my life at this point. And like I said, we grew up together. We learned how to be humans, and the entire time she's had my back. Even when she had a near-death experience, a close call with death, you know, she was more worried about what was going on with me. So, you know, I've did my share of sacrificing. I did it in different ways. I flew all over the world to try to make enough money to keep this family going, and to sacrifice myself for this. But she did the same thing. She just did it in a different way. All the while keeping a strong face and, you know, her chin up, never letting anyone see how hard it was dealing with all this, you know, the trauma she's experienced from the consequences of my being the way I was and all the stuff that had happened to me. This is not, she doesn't just get isolated from me, you know. And then last year, through all of this, you know, I was still drinking. I was doing really poorly. And then I realized I had autism. That was the scariest moment I've had in a long time, because I wasn't sure of what I was going to be capable of doing anymore. If I was going to have to quit my job, or what it meant, and what it meant to the ego that was me, because I had built up a persona of being able to carry the world on my back, and now I couldn't do that anymore, and I knew I couldn't anymore. So I went into a very deep depression, which she was there for me the whole time. And then I had my awakening. And my awakening started with 3 days of enlightenment, we'll call it, but it was a Kundalini awakening, essentially, where I woke up one morning, and I was fully enlightened. Which, if you don't realize is happening, especially to the people outside of you, it seems insane. I seemed crazy. I was doing irrational things as far as people in the 3D world could have seen, and I couldn't understand why no one else could understand what I now did, and that this was all ridiculous. This is a matrix. This is not real. And everybody else was still, well, let's say, asleep of it. So that 3-day period, followed by 2 weeks, that's no more than that, 2 months of boot camp, we'll call it, was very scary. Now, I'm sure she had thoughts that maybe I had schizophrenia like my father has. And that would have been terrifying. And how are you going to support this family? Your husband's now lost his mind, and he's not going to be able to help. I went from making, you know, a lot of money in a oil field job to not being able to work anymore all of a sudden. And then she started awakening too. This journey has been absolutely crazy. This last 10 months, I believe it's 10 months, since that happened, have been even crazier. But we are always together, and our relationship only grows stronger every day. It's reached a point that I hoped it always would. where I still push everybody away from me sometimes. But we always know it's one step closer. And that no matter how hard it gets, it's going to be okay. And like I said, I always wanted this kind of relationship, this kind of closeness, and I feel like we finally have it. So I think the big breakthrough is just around the corner. Inside joke. It's going to be, like I told her today, I told you today, it feels like Christmas is coming. I know there is no way in hell that we could have gone through all of that without there being some sort of big reward. And I feel like we're there. It's just around the corner. And it feels like Christmas is coming. But it's like Christmas is coming, but you don't know exactly what Christmas Day is or Christmas morning is. Could be a day, could be a month, could be a year. But it doesn't matter, because Christmas is coming. And no matter what happens, I feel happy. So, I love you. Like I always say, I hope this video finds you well. I love you all, and we'll see you tomorrow.